Leafs and Bruins tonight, game 6 at Scotiabank. The Leafs have to win in order to stay alive in these playoffs, and they're going to have to do it without Auston Matthews. To talk about that and lots more, let's go to Scotiabank and bring in Mark Masters. Mark, ordinarily, or up until this point, it's been the shroud of secrecy surrounding Auston Matthews' condition and whether or not he'll play. But already, Sheldon Keefe has come out and said no Auston Matthews for tonight's critical game 6. What's the latest update there? And why do you think Sheldon Keefe came out and actually made it official this time?
Yeah, interesting departure from what they've been doing during the playoffs. Here's the update on Auston Matthews. He skated again this morning, well before the team hit the ice. Again, similar to what he did yesterday, kind of ramping back up with the skills development staff. But when I saw that he was on the ice when I walked in the building today, I said, okay, he's probably not playing, because you almost never see a guy out that early who's planning on playing that night. So that was the first kind of sign that Matthews, at least it was good he was back on the ice, but that he was not going to be available for game 6. And then, of course, the team had a full skate here. Everyone else was on the ice, no Matthews. That was the next sign. And then Sheldon Keefe gets to the podium and he just tells us, which was nice for the media, that you don't have to go through the whole guessing game or the charade of he's a game time decision or whatever. We have eyes. The Bruins have eyes. I think everyone could see if he wasn't on the ice at the morning skate, he's unlikely to play. And I think they just probably want to keep everyone in the right mindset. Like, they played well without Auston Matthews in that Game 5 win. I asked Jim Montgomery about Matthews missing the game. He's like, great player. They played great without him, and I don't think there's any need to kind of have the team or anyone guessing about whether there's a white knight coming through the door onto the ice tonight. It's just Matthews is out again. Let's keep the mindset the where it was in Game 5. Let's do it again. Teams have to overcome adversity. Teams have to deal with absences and injuries and illnesses all year, every playoff round. It seems like everyone's dealing with something, and I think that's where the Leafs want their players' mind at heading into this next elimination game.
With Matthews out, Domi was on a line with Marner and Bertuzzi replacing Auston Matthews. Do you think that line stays together?
I would assume so. They did not run lines this morning, but how do you change that? They were amazing. Sheldon Keefe lauded them. Yeah. Domi really stepped up. He was great on the face-offs as well. Marner, from my point of view, Marner played his best game of the series in Game 5. So I'd like to keep him going there. Bertuzzi looked good. I see no reason for them to change anything. And maybe the bottom 6 had some troubles against Boston's depth players, but certainly at the top of the lineup, I see no reason for Keefe or the Leafs to change anything that they saw from what they saw in Game 5.
All right, let's get to the home versus away scenario. The Toronto Maple Leafs have been battling this thing for years now. They held the Bruins to just 2 shots on net in the first period of last game. That was in Boston, of course. Completely different style of play than what we'd seen them so far in this series. They've now lost 6 straight at home. Keefe says, hey, doesn't matter that we're at home. We're not trying to impress anybody. But is that true? How can the Leafs bring their road game onto home ice so they could snap this losing streak at home in the playoffs?
They just have to do it. I mean, Sheldon Keefe said again today, the plan is the same at home on the road. The mindset hasn't been there. They've gotten more rattled. They've gone off their game at times in this building and not at TD Garden, which is counterintuitive. You think, being in TD Garden in hostile territory, maybe that's where they would become unglued more, but it hasn't been the case. It's been here. So they're focused on just keeping the same mindset. They haven't changed any of their approaches or their processes and how they prepare for this game. They just know they have to be better and do what they've done on the road at home. It's just doing it. I don't know what else you can say, Gino.
What about from the Bruins' perspective? This is a team that was up 3-1 in the first round last year against the Florida Panthers, completely collapsed and got ousted, hugely devastated by what happened. I know you guys have tried to ask the question to Brad Marchand, and he kind of sloughed it off. You've had the conversation with Jim Montgomery. What are you hearing from them about their need to not repeat what they did last year against the Panthers?
Yeah, they seemed nervous to start Game 5. It felt like there was pressure on the Bruins. Even though they were up 3-1 in the series and on home ice, they did not play like a loose group in Game 5. I asked Jim Montgomery whether he felt anything that happened last year was seeping in. He said they talked about it at their meeting yesterday. Some frank words were exchanged. They did not do a good job of living in the moment in Game 5, and he expects them to do a much better job of that here tonight. And of course, as much as the Leafs have struggled at home, the Bruins have been good on the road, so they draw confidence from that. I asked Brandon Carlo after their morning skate here about the whole angle that the Leafs have really been leaning into, right? Joel Edmondson said today, as soon as they went down 3-1, it was brought up that the Bruins blew it up 3-1 last year. And I asked Carlo about that, and he said, it's the media. You guys are talking about it more than us. But it does, Gino, feel like it's hanging out there. It's there. And if somehow the Bruins lose this game tonight and the Leafs have won 2 in a row without Auston Matthews, you can really feel like going back into Boston, there's going to be an immense amount of pressure on the Bruins.
You know what else we've been talking a lot about is Brad Marchand, for both the good and the bad. He basically kicked the Leafs' butt through most of the first 4 games. He was drawing penalties, he was scoring goals, but the Leafs got to him last game. He actually took his first 2 penalties of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And at one point, he actually got wrestled to the ice by one of the on-ice officials, and you can just see the frustration. What did the Leafs do differently last game to shut Marchand down and knock him off his game that they're going to try to replicate again tonight?
Hard to know. They say they just play him hard, and they haven't changed their approach to him, but it definitely felt like Brad Marchand was off his game in Game 5. The 2 penalties, he only had 1 penalty in his previous 12 playoff games. Pontus Holmberg and him got into a bit of a wrestling match. Kalle Jarnkrok joked about that and said, not sure it was much of a wrestling match. It felt like the ref got Marchand more than anyone. And so the Leafs, they noticed that, right? They noticed that the Bruins captain, who they lean on to be the calm kind of emotional center, was a little off in that game. He was held off the score sheet for the first time. Now, Marchand does seem to revel in being the villain, right? He seems to enjoy it when he's been here. His best games of the series were in this building. So it'll be intriguing to see what they get out of him tonight. Jim Montgomery, I asked Jim Montgomery, what do you expect to see from Marchand tonight? And he said he expects him to be at his best and to deliver. He's definitely in the spotlight tonight, Gino.
You know who else in the spotlight is Jeremy Swayman. This guy had been kicking butt so far in the Stanley Cup playoffs. The Leafs finally got to him. With that, they snapped his winning streak against the Leafs. Swayman, though, personally is 0-3 in games where he's got an opportunity to clinch. And he was asked about how disappointed he was by not being able to clinch the series in Game 2. And he came out with what sounds like a guarantee. And I want to quote him. Swayman says, "We saw an opportunity to clinch that we missed, and we're not going to let that happen again." What did you think of this, what seems to me like a guarantee that could be bulletin board material for the Leafs to look at?
I don't see it quite the same way, Gino. I think that's just a confident guy being confident. But I was struck. We were just waiting for the Bruins to come off the ice today, and Swayman came off, and he was trying to get fist bumps from some of the folks who work at the arena here, and they were kind of reluctant, like, we don't want to fist bump the opposing goalie who's been so good against the Leafs all year, and he was just joking with them. And I was like, wow, this guy, he is just calm and confident and has that swagger about him. I couldn't believe it. I was just watching him and how he was just joking around coming off the ice. So I think that's who he is, and that's why they have stuck with him. They've loved the way he approached this, coming into Game 1, getting his first ever Game 1 start in the playoffs, and how he responded to that. And this will be intriguing, though, because the other starts have all been spaced out a little bit. He started Game 1, he did not start Game 2, and then Game 3 and Game 4, you had the 2-day break. So now this is kind of the workload's getting up, and he got out-dueled for the first time in the series in Game 5. Joseph Woll was incredible. Joel Edmondson said reminded him a bit of Jordan Binnington, his old Blues teammate. So there's some buzz about the goalie at the other end now. So this will be fascinating to see if Swayman can back up those confident words.
What about Joseph Woll? I love this kid's attitude. You could not wipe the smile off his face after he won last game, giving up just 1 goal on 28 shots. A guy who's still very young, relatively inexperienced in the Stanley Cup playoffs, comes up huge. Is it just me, or do you get the sense in talking to him on pretty much a daily basis that nothing seems to faze this kid right now?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we saw at the start of the year for sure. When Woll became the #1 goalie, stole the job from the struggling Ilya Samsonov. Max Domi was comparing his composure to that of Carey Price. Domi got to know Price in Montreal when he was with the Habs, and he just said the way he's able to kind of stay calm reminded him a bit of Carey Price. I'm not sure anyone, of course, is going to be entirely like Carey Price, but that certainly raised eyebrows earlier this year. I mentioned Edmondson comparing Woll to Jordan Binnington and the way he was during their cup run in St. Louis. So, yeah, I mean, this has been what they've seen in this guy. This is why when Samsonov got hurt in the playoffs last year, they went to him instead of Matt Murray, a two-time Stanley Cup champion who was healthy and ready at that moment to play and was the backup at the end of the playoffs last year. They have a lot of faith in Joseph Woll. He's the goalie of the future, and they believe the future can be right now.
This is a very special day in Toronto Maple Leafs franchise history. It's the anniversary. It was 57 years ago today the Toronto Maple Leafs last hoisted the Stanley Cup. They're still a long way from getting a shot to hoist the Stanley Cup this year, but they got to win tonight in order to even have a shot to end that drought. Mark Masters from Scotiabank, where the Leafs are getting set to face the Bruins tonight in Game 6.